So I made a video about Planet of the Apes not long ago, and I've been writing, well, I haven't been writing, I've been editing the video of Fundamentally Loathsome Part 3, but in that video I do mention Planet of the Apes once, but I was finding today that I could probably talk even more about Planet of the Apes when talking about Marilyn Manson, because I think that there's a lot of themes in Planet of the Apes that really intersect with Marilyn Manson. And of course, Marilyn Manson really likes talking about apes and monkeys in his lyrics, and so you can find a lot of connection there as well. Now, I usually kind of make a connection with 2001: A Space Odyssey when talking about the monkey-ape idea in Marilyn Manson's lyrics, and you can certainly find that there. Like in Crucifixion in Space, the chorus goes, "This is evolution, the monkey, the man, then the gun," which of course is exactly the theme of the whole movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. If you really want to condense the movie down to a single theme, it's this is evolution, the monkey, the man, then the gun, and then from that, there's this implication that there is yet distance to travel in our evolution to a higher stage than the gun. The atom of Eden was a bomb. I like that. I don't know in the lyric sheet whether it says atom or atom, because I don't have Hollywood yet on CD. I haven't bought it yet because I haven't done any work on that album. But I like the idea that it can be interpreted either way, as atom or atom. And if anything, the apple can also kind of be a symbol for an atom. This little round object that sort of contains with it the building blocks of our universe. And of course that reminds me of "And I Was a Hand Grenade That Never Stopped Exploding." This idea that a man can be a bomb, that a man's sort of dangerous qualities can be compared to an explosive object. And that's something in Planet of the Apes that you find is I think that's kind of why Taylor at the beginning of the movie is so jaded and wants to leave planet Earth to find something else. It's a really great character, this guy who's this astronaut. And you think of the astronaut as, like, you know, Major Tom stepping through the door and floating in a most peculiar way. The kind of the inventiveness of the human spirit and the you know, conquering the final frontier. But then Taylor from Planet of the Apes is like, he's like a man who has evolved so much that he no longer likes humans and thinks of them as apes. He already thinks of his species as apes, which it was what makes it so funny when he comes back down to Earth and finds this twisted parody of human civilization as actual talking apes. But at the end, he sees the Statue of Liberty, and he says, "You maniacs, you blew it up. God damn you all to hell." And so it's great. It's a great moment because in the whole movie, he's put in this position where in order to save his own life, he has to defend humanity. He has to convince the apes that humans can talk and they can be intelligent. Which is, of course, something that he never wanted to do. He always hated humanity and thought they were lesser, thought they were apes, thought they were barbarians. And then this moment at the end, and so he's like, making the case for humanity this whole movie, and then at the end of the movie he's met with this face-to-face realization that yes, everything he believed about humans, all of the worst things he ever believed about humanity were true, and that people really just are violent, destructive apes. And the Statue of Liberty, the great symbol of this sort of compassionate and free human society, just sitting there in ruins because of what the humans did to this planet. And then we get more of that in Beneath the Planet of the Apes when he finds the mutant humans who worship the bomb. I guess the bomb that kind of created them, because they're supposed to be radioactive mutants. And so the bomb is their creator god almost, and they worship the doomsday bomb. They're like if humanity just totally went in the wrong direction. And they're sort of aware of it, I think, because they always go around wearing these human masks, pretending that they're not mutants. It's like they don't think that their faces and their appearances are good enough, and they're always having to pretend to be something they aren't. And then at the end, Taylor blows up the world. You know, he was saying, "You maniacs, you blew it up." Well, now he becomes one of them, truly. He decides to finish what was started. And that's that idea of, you know, I talked about on Antichrist Superstar, if you can't beat them, join them by beating them. The ape is a great symbol of mimicry, of something that isn't something pretending to be that thing. And the apes in this series are mimicking humans, and they have this conformist culture that is bent on sort of mimicking itself, on not evolving. And there's that really corny moment. It's a very corny moment, very on the nose, and yet it works, I think, because it is saying something with its corniness, where Taylor is addressing the what do you call them? The judges, the orangutans. He's addressing them, and they do that thing where one of them covers his mouth, one of them covers his ears, and one of them covers his eyes. Very silly, but it's also, I think, a good statement on how people, you know, choose to ignore the truth and copy each other instead of facing the destruction of their worldview, I guess. And I talked about what I talked about regarding Planet of the Apes in this new video I'm making is how the alpha aspect, which is talked about on Mechanical Animals, not exactly a character, he's representative of what Marilyn Manson was going through. The alpha aspect on that song, on that album rather, there are lyrics that indicate he's going into outer space because he's reaching for the stars. He's reaching for something outside of himself that he thinks is going to grant him happiness. And I compared that to Taylor in Planet of the Apes, how he did that same thing. And the idea is that once he gets into outer space, he's totally alone. And the Earth is far away from him. He's totally detached from the world. But it's because he's actually trying to reattach his emotions. He's actually trying to become human again. And for that he needs to reach for the stars. But in doing so, he becomes totally alienated from the world. So he becomes an alien from his own planet by going into outer space. Which is, of course, the same thing that happens to Taylor. Taylor is now an alien on his own planet. I found that very interesting. But then the more I thought about it, we have that connection with the alpha aspect, but then with the omega aspect, and omega is a character unlike alpha. With the omega aspect, actually you can also find a strong parallel in Escape from the Planet of the Apes. That's the one where Cornelius and Zira and the other chimp doctor go back in time to the 1970s. And so they're also on their own planet. They're aliens on their own planet. But they become aliens not by going into outer space, but by coming down back to Earth. And really, there's a fascinating aspect of the Omega on Mechanical Animals in how you can compare him to Frankenstein or Edward Scissorhands or E.T. These creatures that, in the case of Edward and Frankenstein, they're stitched together creatures. They're composite humans. They are artificially created in a laboratory. But they kind of come into this world that isn't theirs. And they are not perceived as human beings. They're not perceived as people. They're kind of perceived as objects. And because this is a culture that is fascinated by novelty, it's that kind of ape-like culture that looks at this, like in 2001, where they're all looking at the monolith, like, what is this? That's kind of what we are. There's that whole thing in that scene where the apes are crowding around the monolith, where they're kind of scared of it. They're kind of reaching out to touch it, and then they back away, but then they're also attracted to it, and so they're touching it like this. And I think you can kind of compare that to the whole situation with E.T. or Frankenstein or Edward, how they are put in this new environment and they are kind of, people don't quite know what to make of them. Sometimes they're scared of them, sometimes they're attracted to them, sometimes they're really, really attracted to them. But the novelty is interesting to people, and it's interesting in different ways. They can kind of use him to do whatever they really want with him, without really considering who he is and what his needs are. And so there's this aspect where he's kind of treated like an object, something to gawk at, something to point at. And in the process of that, he's dehumanized. You can really make an interesting connection between that and Escape from the Planet of the Apes, because it's a very similar story to Omega. Like, these apes come into the 1970s and they're immediately turned into celebrities. They become these celebrity talking apes. But they also get killed by the end of the movie. All three of the apes end up getting killed. And it's because this culture, you know, it might love them, but it also is afraid of them. And so you're going to get different reactions. And some people are going to hate them. Some people are going to love them. Some people are just going to find them interesting. But they're not human, and they're not really treated as humans, even though there's this sort of air of politeness that people put on with them. And then, of course, you have Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, which is about an ape revolution. And, you know, that kind of reminds me of Antichrist Superstar. It's actually been a while since I've seen that movie, so I think there are themes in it, especially toward the end, that I can't really remember. I want to watch that movie again, actually. I think it would be interesting to see again, because I think I remember it ending on an interesting note. There being a sort of conflict of how savage the apes should be in revolting against the humans. And there were also two different endings to that movie. I think there was an alternate ending where Roddy McDowall's character, Caesar, was a little bit more malevolent, if that's the right word for talking about a slave rebelling against his masters. We're all simple monkeys with alien babies. The primate's scream of consonance is his own mind's dissonance. I mean, you can find it everywhere. I think that Planet of the Apes, the ape metaphor was such a great motif to use for that series, and they were able to do so much with the subtext on that series. And Manson did basically the same thing. He tackled a lot of the same themes from those films in his music with the same metaphor. So anyway, that's the connection there. Marilyn Manson, Planet of the Apes, connecting two different things I've talked about on this channel. This is VEDN Day 26. We're almost done with VEDN, thankfully. See you tomorrow for VEDN Day 27.